now tuned in to the cold, hard truth. Cayman's #1 hard-hitting live podcast show, where we feature some straightforward conversations on political, social, and celebrity news and all things happening in the Cayman Islands and around the world. This show was created to give the people a voice and a means of being involved and informed without any filters. Sometimes it gets crazy, but we always keep it real. We bring you the tea, piping hot, so grab your favorite beverage and join the conversation via WhatsApp at 324-1612. Email tips@caymanmarlroad.com. Now, here's your host, Sandy Hill, broadcasting live from the beautiful Cayman Islands.
Thank you guys so much for tuning in this morning. It's a rainy day here. We are expecting some severe weather. There's been a couple severe weather alerts that have been advisories issued. So please, folks, pay attention to that. Basically, we have marine watch. So obviously, if you have a boat or you go out in the water today and tomorrow, probably not the days to do that. And there's also, gusts of up to, I think it was 25 knots that we are expecting today as well. So I would, from 20 to 25 knots today. And then overnight, it seems to get a little bit worse. And then tomorrow, 20, 25 knots, I think gusting up to perhaps 30. So please be reminded that There's been an advisory issued that there'll be strong northeasterly winds and rough seas expected across the Cayman area for the next 24 hours as a high pressure system behind the cold front, which is a cold front that's pushing down from the US, tightens the pressure gradient over the Northwest Caribbean. Radar images, this is as of 6 o'clock this morning, show isolated showers in and around the Cayman area, moving towards the southwest. So cloudy skies with 40% chance of rain and showers and possible thunderstorms, temperatures in the upper 80s, and winds will be northeast at 20 to 25 knots. Seas will be rough with wave heights of 6 to 8 feet. And there is a small craft warning in effect. And then tonight we have cloudy skies again with a 40% chance of rain. Temperatures fall to the mid 70s and winds will be northeast 25 to 30 knots. And seas will be moderate. So bottom line is please stay out of the water is what I would recommend. And also, carry your umbrella and be prepared for a little bit of weather today. If possible, stay inside, stay off the roads. The roads are always a mess when it is, raining. It doesn't take much in Cayman to cause a accident in our roadway in any event. So please take heed. So we got some bad news this morning. I know that some of you are in my news group and would have been aware that Coco had surgery yesterday. And unfortunately, this morning, we received word that she has passed away. So, she was a small dog. And the attack was really, really vicious. And unfortunately, she didn't make it. So, thank you all. Those of you who have reached out, thank you so much. I appreciate the messages and when you've owned dogs your entire life, there's never an easy loss of a dog because, I love my pets. I don't know about anybody else. But to me, a dog is family. And when you lose a loved one to violence, I can only imagine. It's just unbelievable. And the worst part of it is, in Cayman, we have so many things wrong. I try to always say that we live in the best place in the world, but at the same time, there's so much in place that just doesn't work. And one of those areas I know with certainty is the animal law. For an island this size with as many dogs as we have, it's hard to imagine that we only have 2 animal welfare officers. And we've only recently gotten 2. For most of the time, it was just 1. I remember Miss Maggie down in Newlands, being the only one for many, many years. And, as a country, we do a really horrible job with our dogs. I mean, all pets, but we shouldn't be patting ourselves in the back when it comes to how we, generally speaking, treat pets. But there are those of us who do the right thing by our pets. We treat them like family. And to see another dog come and just unprovoked, attack your dog in such a vicious manner. When you witness it, I think it's different if you don't see the violence. But when you actually witness that, I can tell you there's nothing more horrific in the world to have to be subjected to be honest. I am really, I'm thankful for the 10 years that I had her, because she was really the best dog. She wasn't a perfect dog, but she was the best dog. Oh God. There's so many memories, in 10 years that you've had a dog. Every single day, this dog was like, here by her side. She was just so much fun and rambunctious, and she had an affinity for all stuffed animals. She was just so incredibly sweet. When this incident happened on Monday night, I thought for sure that she had died that night, because when I tell you that this dog attacked her on her property, but then after viciously attacking her for what seemed like forever, then dragged her like she was nothing. It was just so unbelievable, and he just dragged her off and went back to his yard with her. And I said, listen, get my dog back. Because I knew he was going to kill her. I knew enough about dogs that he was taking her back to finish her off and to just shred her to pieces. And I said, no. I was not going to let my dog go. I can still, in my head, literally hear her at times. I can still hear the little jingle of her collar. I cannot believe it. And then I found out that this dog, they had attacked another dog earlier in the night before they came in our direction. And that was a bigger dog, but luckily the people who were, that dog's owner is away, but the people who were watching that dog were able to pry this dog off. And in the process, I understand that someone got bit. You know, a lot of times on this show, I often say that you're right where you're supposed to be. And in times like this, you do question. I mean, we're all human beings, right? You do question, how is this where I'm supposed to be? No one should ever have to go through this, but I know for a fact that so many people have over the years. They have lost a dog, a cat, a rabbit, whatever, to violence in this country because we always say blame the owners and not the dog. I'm going to tell you what I think about that. These were not actually sharing wild dogs. They belonged to someone. They belonged to someone in the neighborhood. And I know she's upset as well. I mean, obviously she doesn't know my pain, but when you have dogs, when you decide to get a dog, it is incumbent on you as a dog owner to learn about dogs, right? You need to learn about your breed. You need to learn about dogs specifically. And I think that so many people in this country are irresponsible in that regard. Not that this woman purposely let her dogs out, but anyone who would see them interacting with other dogs, even by the fence line, would know that that would be trouble if they ever got out. And every pet owner has to know there's no such thing as an impenetrable fence. Dogs dig, things happen. Dogs can get out of their fence. And if you own a dog that you cannot control, or multiple dogs, even worse, that you cannot control because of their size, because of the breed, because some dogs are not necessarily big in weight, but in strength, they are uncontrollable. I've had big dogs. The irony of it, Coco is the only small dog that I've actually ever owned because I was never really a small dog person. But Coco really was a small dog with a big dog personality. Like, she really won me over in so many different ways when I first met her. And I went in hoops to get Coco because her owner had moved overseas, and I had to do a bit of social media detective work to even find out who Coco was really for, because somebody else was minding her, so that I could get her in my life, because she was so amazing. After I dog sat her for a couple of days, I'm like, oh my God, I have to have this dog. And my condolences for the loss of your brother. You know, you expect dogs to die from old age. And I think every dog should have that luxury of living a full life. Coco could have had another really good 5 years at least. Because some old breeds, some small breeds, really can live a long time. So when a pet owner doesn't know anything about their breed, they just know, oh, they bark and they go on uncontrollably at times, and You don't know that if that dog gets out and gets in a situation that you can control that dog, then you don't need to own that dog. Trust me. Like I said, I've owned dogs my entire life, and I know what it's like for them to even fight. They could be the best of friends. My Oscar and Rupert were the best of friends, but they would get into fights with each other. And there were times that, we would have to part them. And if you don't know how to do that, or you don't have that level of control over your own dog, that's where I say then you're irresponsible, because you should not have a dog that you cannot control. And unfortunately, in a circumstance like this, when a dog is in kill mode, that's the only way I can describe it. That is when you comprehend how powerful your dog can really be. You know what is so sad is that poor Coco, this isn't the first time she's been attacked by the dog, but obviously this is the most vicious attack. And so I know the headaches of trying to deal with the police. When it comes to the animal law, they are useless oftentimes. I know the perils of having to deal with irresponsible pet owners who don't care. At least in this instance, the owner is remorseful. But, I've had the opposite, where the other owners just did not care at all. And they did everything in their power to excuse the dog's bad behavior. They even went as far as trying to blame me for it, trying to blame Coco for it. Well, she comes to the fence. I'm like, it's our fence, and that's what dogs do. That doesn't give your dog the right to attack my dog on our property or anywhere else in a public street. And I had to jump through so many hoops, contacting the governor at the time to get anywhere. And this is where I'm saying now that the law is failing us, folks. If a dog harms another dog or a person, that dog should immediately be confiscated. There should be no option for the owner to keep that dog. As it is now, the police don't seem to know their powers in terms of assessing the situation at the time and what should be done. Most people, I've heard of other people losing their dogs and then they do nothing about it. They don't file a police report, nothing. And I say to them, when you do that, not only do you not get justice for your own dog, but you also don't get justice for all dogs, because our legislators will sit back and say, oh, we don't have a problem. We just have a couple reported cases a year. They don't understand the magnitude of what dog owners in this country are dealing with. You don't feel like you can own a dog without at some point in its life the dog being attacked on multiple occasions. Honestly, who should have to live like that? Going out in your own yard isn't even safe, because you don't know on any given day who or what might be roaming around the place. Once a dog has blood in its mouth and it has done what those dogs have done collectively, One dog was more the aggressor, but I can tell you that as pack animals, both dogs are now a danger to other dogs. And as far as I'm concerned, potentially people as well. You know, my daughter had to witness that on Monday night. She got up this morning asking about when is Coco coming back. She said, I miss her so much, she said. And so at some point, I have to tell my 4-year-old daughter that Coco isn't coming back. I know that a lot of you guys know that I always talked about Coco, but I want to show you what an amazing dog she was. This is when we first brought my daughter home, and Coco was so curious about, oh my gosh, what is this? What is this little person? Coco was the most gentle dog in the world. She was so curious about what was happening in our lives. But you know, she was there for every minute of Gigi's life. All of the tantrums and the first steps, Coco was right there watching, playing with her. This is one of the first photos of the two of them together. And I remember Gigi, obviously she was really young here, but kind of like just kicking Coco a little bit, like, what is this thing? And Coco was always so amazing, you know? Just the most amazing dog in the world from day one. This was her first night we brought the baby home. She was like, I don't know what this thing is, but it's mine now and I'm here for it. So even if we walked away, you know, Coco was still right underneath the bed, right next to Gianna. Always protecting her and playing with her and looking out for her. And I guess that's what awesome dogs do, right? That's exactly what they do. I have so many amazing memories. And of course, that's what I'm trying to really focus on. Because what I saw on Monday night will forever be embedded on my brain. And when that dog was dragging her back, I don't even remember like everything I said, but I said, get my fucking dog. I was like, this cannot be happening. And you will not take my dog back to your yard and kill my dog. I couldn't let that happen to Coco. I said, no, get my owed it to Coco. I tried. I'm so sorry. I really tried to save her. I kicked that dog. I got bug spray. I sprayed the dog in the eye, and that dog would not let go of my dog. We cannot continue to allow people to suffer in this country because nobody gives a damn about fixing the animal law. We have to fix it. Those dogs should not be with the owner right now. Anywhere else in a decent place in the US, those dogs would be put down. And I am not saying that just because I've lost my dog, because trust me, I love all animals and I wouldn't want anything to happen to somebody else's dog. But when your dog attacks multiple dogs, but any dog unprovoked, I'm sorry, but your dog has got to go. It's as simple as that. And unfortunately, the laws in this country do not allow for that to happen as easily as you think. You have to run through circles. And meantime, the clock is ticking. What if this happens again? What if in the process of this happening, the dogs turned on my daughter, who was starting to get upset when she realized what was going on? We saw just the other day in Jamaica that a child was viciously attacked by a pack of dogs, had his skull ripped from his head. And we sit back and we think, what? That's not going to happen in the Cayman Islands? We've had a governor who was attacked by a pack of 5 dogs in this country. And still we wait. For what? What are we waiting for? Does it have to be the premier's dog? Does it have to be Juliana's dog? Someone that they believe is important in this country? For them to say there are too many gaps in this legislation. There's not enough enforcement. There's not enough teeth. Police officers themselves are not even being trained on the animal law. So how do we expect anybody to enforce it? Why do we only have 2 animal control officers? You know, when they came by yesterday, they were getting other calls. Oh, there's another incident here. I mentioned to you guys that a woman had messaged to say she went to look at a rental property and she was attacked by somebody's dog. So as victims, you know, all of you have to do your part. You have to report it to the police and you have to see the process through. We all need to be contacting our legislators as well and say, what gives? Supposedly, they were supposed to outlaw backyard breeding. And we see with that case of that woman having how many dogs? 30-something dogs, 40-something dogs, I don't even know. Some of them had to be put down. Some of them died because of diseases. Some of them had to be rehomed and they will be scarred for life. And yet that's not enough for our legislators to say, oh, by the way, remember that animal law that we're supposed to be working on to make this a better country for poor animals who they don't have a voice at all. We talk about people in this country not having a voice. Well, technically, you can find your voice if you want. You can call the talk show. You can write to the newspapers. You can call your MLAs. What's the dog going to do? What is poor Coco going to do? So, I have to do right by her. I tried that night to do right by her by trying to save her life. And unfortunately, it was too much. When Dr. Brenda called me yesterday morning, I really knew. She said she was so shocked to see, because she wasn't there the Monday night that we took her in. She was so shocked to see the extent of Coco's injuries. She wasn't expecting it. From shoulder to shoulder, her entire back had been like ripped, where that dog just had her and was just shaking her like she was nothing. But my dog was everything to this family. She was everything to me. There were so many nights that Coco and I just sat here by ourselves. This was before I had my husband, before I had Gigi. We'd watch a movie. Coco would get in trouble going through the garbage. She would do all sorts of mischievous things sometimes, but you know what? She was still the best dog in the world. And now my daughter, who loved Coco, is going to have to go years without the enjoyment of her company and her little spirit around the place. Recently, we started transitioning my daughter to sleep in her own room, and Coco, for the first time, was so confused because she didn't know where to sleep. So in the middle of the night, she would get up. Some nights she would sleep in the master with my husband because I'm trying to sleep with my daughter to get her settled in. And then she would get up halfway through the night, go from one location to the next. It's almost like she was saying to us, okay, I'm going to give everybody equal treatment. She loved car rides, sticking her head out the car, getting the breeze in her face. She loved going to the beach. She loved her doggy treats, but of course she loved human food more than anything. She could steal some food. Sometimes I would say that Coco was like a little Houdini because she would do things that would defy, like, I don't even know how she did it sometimes, but she was a jumper, so she could jump really high. And sometimes we wouldn't catch her, but we could see the evidence of how high she jumped. And I remember one year, a couple of years ago, I came home and she was on top of the washer. I was like, how the hell did you get up there? And she got up there and she kind of got stuck. So she stayed there until we came home. And I don't know to this day how she did it. Because washer and dryer is at least, I don't even know how many feet that is, but that's high. And somehow Coco managed to jump up there, but then couldn't get back down. Because there was a situation with some centipedes on the ground. And she was like, I'm not staying down there with them. So the dogs have an owner. I'm not trying to say too much about the owner in that situation right now because she's actually a really nice person. But they got out of their fenced yard. And this is what I'm going to say about being a responsible pet owner. It is your responsibility, even if you have a dog for what you think is protection, right? It is your responsibility to socialize your dog because there's no reason why your dog should be going around just killing other dogs. That's not the kind of protection that you need from a dog. So it is important for you do your dog a disservice when you keep a dog behind a fence in its entire life. You never walk your dog. That dog, those dogs in this case, had so much pent up anger and angst. You don't walk them, you don't expose them to other dogs early on, and not just dogs in their same circle or their same pack. Because, when puppies are born, obviously they are part of a pack automatically. You have a responsibility to know that if you take your dog out somewhere, or if your dog is accidentally let out from behind that fence, that dog will not be a harm to anyone. And if they try to harm another dog, you can intervene and stop the attack. And that wasn't possible in this case at all. I mean, we had so many people standing there. Finally, a guy came out with a machete, but I think, unfortunately, by the time he finally came out, they were dragging Coco back to their yard. And Natalie, I'm really sorry about your loss as well. Yeah, we try to process the loss, but you know what? Our children certainly feel it as well. Like, I don't even know how I'm going to explain this to Gianna, because she doesn't really have a concept of what death is yet. She was saying that night, Misha, thank you so much, that are the police gonna arrest those bad dogs? I want to say a special thank you to Misha and Corey, because they were actually there that night. They had come over. And of course, Misha's pregnant. We didn't want her to fall down or get in the middle of this. I have a lot of pain in my knee and leg now because of the incident. But thankfully, with Misha being there, she was able to, when they eventually heard me, because it was just, I walked outside with Coco and it was just me, Coco, and my daughter, who was only 4 years old. When they eventually heard me screaming for help, they came out and Misha grabbed Gianna and took her back inside. When Gigi was first born and I would be like talking to her, sometimes I'd accidentally reverse their names. Like, I would call her Coco and call Coco Gigi. And, Coco was there first. So, of course, she was such an integral part of this family. Thank you, Charmaine. And I saw Charmaine recently lost her dog as well, her dog, Charlie. So, yeah, so now I think I need to go to the hospital for my leg, to be honest. But I'm going to have to explain to Gianna that unfortunately Coco isn't coming back from the hospital, the doggy hospital. I want to say this, Izzy, that no dog should be chained up 24/7. I see this all the time, and there's so many Caymanians who think that that's okay, that they just throw some food at the dog. Oh yeah, well, my dog is fine. It gets fed. There's so much more to being a dog owner. than just that. I wish that the vast majority of people on this island didn't have dogs, because they have proven that they don't know anything about how to be a good dog owner. They don't care. They're not learning. All of these things are against the law, Cindy, but the problem is, what does the law do? You're not supposed to have a ferocious dog off the leash, but yet it happens. We've had dogs attack the poor donkey at Pedro Castle. You know, people let their dogs roam. They get dogs that they don't care about, they don't do anything about. And thank you, Janice, for that. I think that is the one comfort in this, to know that what she went through, at least she doesn't have to suffer anymore. But at the same time, it's no comfort in knowing that that's how she lost her life. I mean, why, why should my dog have to be viciously attacked like that? And that is her last memory. I didn't even get to see her. My husband didn't want me to go yesterday to see her. People sit down and they suffer in silence when these things happen. I'm not the only person who has shed tears over a situation like this, for sure. We hear about these stories all the time. And like I said, we are complacent. We are content until one day it's going to be your turn. I mean, this is why, I speak out on issues all the time, not because they necessarily affect me personally, but my position is one day it could be me. It could be someone I care about. And we shouldn't even have to get to that point to address issues. We should just be addressing issues because it's the right thing to do. Our legislators need to fix this. They need to fix the laws, fix the loopholes. They need to inject more money into the Department of Agriculture when it comes to education, preventative programs. They need more than one or two officers who can go out there and deal with the difficult situations that they have to deal with every single day. Danica, good morning. I can't hear you for some reason.
Morning, Sandra.
Oh, there you are. Looks like you're all ready for Christmas.
I'm getting geared up. I'm sorry to hear about your loss.
Thank
when
you.
I first met you, Coco was your knight in shining armor.
I know. Everybody would have heard me talking about Coco for years. How are you?
It's a good day. It's a good week. Still giving God thanks. We're still here and we still have life.
Yeah, for sure. So give us the rundown. Of course, you guys know that Danica joins us every Wednesday for Caribbean Connection Wednesdays. So she is a regional correspondent. And I'm curious, Danica, do you have any news on the kid who had gotten attacked in Jamaica by the pack of dogs? What is his situation?
So the last time we had an update on him, he was in a New York hospital recovering well. He had
Okay.
undergone one of a series of surgeries. He has 8 more to go, but he was at minimum responding well to treatment. So, it's really unfortunate that we come back to the issue of dog ownership again. Um, it's one of those things where all across the Caribbean, it's a part of our socialization that dogs are sort of protection, and when they get out of hand or when things go wrong, there's really no legislation to really support how we treat with those issues that arise. In Jamaica, for example, recently we had amended the dog legislation, and the legislation was amended, and it was a very old legislation. I mean, well over 60 or 70 years that it hadn't been amended. So issues like what you've experienced and what the young child experienced after being mauled by the dogs has really put the spotlight again on personal responsibility, particularly as it relates to animals. Um, I used to own a few cats. Well, they weren't mine, they were strays, and I just adopted them and fed them. I think people in the region should be more responsible, and they should be more considerate when they take on an animal and see it as almost like a person that you have to feed, clothe, and provide uh, entertainment for. Because oftentimes you are right that people just tie them up in the yard, feed them, and they say, "Oh, I love dogs," and I go, "But the dog must be bored. It needs to be walked. It needs to be loved and nurtured." So that's that as it relates to dogs. The big story across the region is coming out of Trinidad. A young man who started a funeral home company with 3 of his other siblings put on quite a display in his Trinidad and Tobago community, where you know the corpse of a dead man was seen on the back of a funeral home truck. It was later seen seated at the front of a funeral that was in session, which is that of his father. And that sparked a lot of attention in Trinidad and Tobago. It had people talking about, is this correct treatment for the dead? The young man explained that, this was the request of the family. And I thought, wow, this is an odd request. At first, when I personally had seen this circulating on social media, and I thought, there's no way. I thought, there's no way it's Jamaica. We're too afraid of the dead. Let it not be us. Lord, please don't let this be one like us. And it turns out that this was Trinidad and Tobago. And the young man that you're seeing there, he, alongside his father, were killed. They were gunned down. It was a double murder. So it's a rather interesting. I don't know how your viewers feel. I saw some of the comments. People thought it was weird, and that's what I thought as well. The fact that it was done on the request of the family doesn't help my feelings about the matter. I still feel kind of like this shouldn't be a thing. But I mean, the owner, Tyler Denny, did say that, he's young and he's showing off what he can do in embalming. I don't know. I'm still on the fence about this matter.
Yeah, it is weird to say the
It is strange, and I'm not sure that this is.
But you know what? Uh-oh. Oh, shoot. What happened to Danica? Oh, gosh. Did I accidentally do that, Danica? Come back. My apologies. I was going to say in terms of how we treat the dead, in fact, it's not entirely unheard of. My apologies, Danica. I may have actually done that to you. I'm not sure. I think I clicked on something, but I was going to say it's not entirely unheard of that we do stuff like this, because historically there was a time when the only time that people were actually photographed was when they were dead. And so they would put them in lifelike settings in the parlor room, sitting up or whatever, and take photographs of them. And that was the only opportunity, because photography was such an expensive and luxurious thing that, yeah, most people didn't get to have photos throughout their entire lives. But when they were dead, they wanted to remember what they looked like. They couldn't necessarily commission a portrait otherwise. So it was at that time that they were, memorialized in either painting or a photo. And they tried to put them in lifelike, at least in American history. I don't know about anywhere else in the world. They would put them in lifelike situations. But it's interesting, about how we treat the dead, and it is weird. It is weird for us, I think, seeing that, to see a deceased person sitting there. But
the problem I have with it is the value behind it. Now, embalming and funerals, particularly for human corpse, are not cheap. And we don't want to make what should be an occasion to reflect on somebody's life and give them a send-off turn into something that becomes entertainment. Now, people would know that funerals in Jamaica are quite entertaining occasions, and I don't think that they should be. I think that they really are for the bereaved family to comfort them. But you do have funerals that turn into parties, and I'm not sure that I agree with what it stands for. And so I am conflicted about it, because I think bereaved families go through a lot already. And I really do think that we need to get to a place in society where we're a little bit thoughtful about the things that we do. I mean, a funeral is not a dance, and many people keep dance at funerals. And I think personally, that's just not what I would want. And also, funerals are expensive. So why are we giving to people who are no longer alive rather than taking care of the people who are here? Because sometimes the only time people show up with flowers for you are when you're dead. And when I'm alive, what happens? Is my life not valuable? Is life not valuable in and of itself? So I think from that perspective, for me, it's a moral challenge.
I mean, have funerals ever really been for the dead, though? I mean, obviously they're an exercise of grieving for the living. I mean, the dead is dead. They're not gonna.
Well, it's always been for the family, and traditionally, okay, so old school Jamaican people are gonna back me up here. Young people are gonna completely bash me. Back in the day, when you passed on, your family would literally prepare your body. People would bring things. This is how dead yards got started, or 9 nights. And they would bring something for the family. They'd bring a flask of rum. They'd bring a goat, people from the community. So funerals were very much community occasions that became commercial ventures. Traditional, old school, good old time Jamaican people that know about their Cersei bush can remember the days when we as a community saw funerals and saw the dead as an opportunity to assist another family and not to profit. I'm not against funeral homes. I'm just suggesting that this move towards a commercial type of entertainment style of funeral it's not something I agree with. So that's the buzzing regional story. Unfortunately, it happens to be about the dead. Then we move on to what's been happening in the Caribbean more generally. What's been going on? So in Barbados, you have them releasing or putting into circulation a new coin that glows in the dark, and they've done this in honor of their frontline workers. I think this is an extraordinary move by Barbados to do such a thing. It captures the sentiments of what we should be doing as a Caribbean community to not only send a message that we're serious about COVID-19, but also reflect on the contributions of those on the front line that have supported our countries in such a difficult time, especially in light of the fact that people in frontline industries are often not paid as well as they should be especially when you compare to their North American counterparts and the limited resources in which they're working with. So I feel like that's a good move by Barbados. Shifting again across the region, closer to the Cayman Islands, here in Jamaica, people continue to flout COVID-19 protocols. I've noticed that you guys are now beginning to experience the same sets of problems that Jamaicans are. And what we're seeing is, initially it was visitors that were coming, and I still believe that a lot of visitors that are arriving are flouting COVID-19 protocols. But what we've seen is that most recently, these illegal parties have become the site of shootings. So over the weekend, a 24-year-old man was gunned down at an illegal party in Portmore, St. Catherine. Again, people partying, having a blast. Gunmen enter and they shoot up the dance. I believe the Jamaican authorities, I don't want to say that they're not taking it seriously. I feel that it's kind of a vindication for them, because they've always been saying you are not to be in attendance at these events. And I don't know how to feel. It's a life that's lost, but it's also a situation that could have been avoided. Maybe, and some might say if he hadn't been gunned down at the party, maybe he'd have been gunned down somewhere else. But it's just the fact that now assessing what has really transpired is so difficult, because people will not come forward because they weren't supposed to be there in the first place. It's sad, it's unfortunate. And just last evening, again, another murder in Jamaica, this time of a returning resident couple, returning resident man. He and his wife were at home. Gunmen entered the house, and the husband was killed, a 72-year-old man who had recently returned from Canada. He often returned to the island in an attempt to escape the winter. So I guess you would call him a snowbird. His wife said that she heard one of his attackers speaking with him in the kitchen, but she never heard the gunshots go off. She believes that they probably used a silencer. So again, murders continue to trend upwards. Previously, they were suggesting that we would be on target to have a murder tally reduced for 2020. I disagree with that. I think we're on target to have more murders than we did in 2019. As of right now, 1,198 persons have been murdered in Jamaica since the start of the year. And there still remains 29 days left to go, 31 days in December. So there's 29 days left to go. While some areas have seen a decline in murders, namely crime hotbeds like Clarendon, St. James, St. Andrews South, others not known for violent crimes have seen a marginal uptick, like St. Anne, which is up by 22 murders, St. Mary, which is up by 8, St. Thomas, which is up by 1. Portland is also up by 1. Portland is a relatively peaceful parish. Whatever they do in Portland, I encourage them to continue doing it. But what we are seeing is that criminals are migrating and spreading out across the country. Obviously, places like St. Andrews South, which primarily constitute garrison communities, tend to have, the highest concentration of crime. But other areas like St. Anne, recording 22 murders than they did in 2019, is of serious concern. Though, as a nation, we've been so focused on COVID-19, the pandemic has only killed 258 persons to date. 258 as a percentage of 1,198 says the focus should be on crime and not COVID-19 necessarily in the way that we've been doing it. we've realized that curfews don't work. So we've been under curfew since about March, on and off, every 2 weeks. They haven't been helpful in preventing crime. The head, or the police commissioner, Major General Anthony Anderson, has said, he's putting his bets, or he's putting his crime strategy around SOEs, so states of emergencies. And I still think, what's the difference between an SOE and a curfew, other than the police can arbitrarily sort of pick you up, put you in jail without a charge for a longer period? It really, in my mind, doesn't help the fight against crime.
Mm-hmm.
However, again, the nation has allocated $6 billion for public order and safety. This is down from $7.2 billion in fiscal year 2019. It is estimated that crime costs Jamaica in excess of $68 billion per year. So crime is worth addressing. Having that money saved from crime gives us 5% or so more on our GDP, because that's what it eats away. We don't take crime seriously enough, and people will tell you people who commit crime also see it as profitable. So we really need to get back to a place that we take life more seriously. The value of people's lives, particularly every year that we have murders over 1,000, becomes diminished. People become desensitized to violence, and it almost becomes acceptable. That being said, that's kind of a wrap as to what's happening regionally. So in Trinidad, we have these new school funerals that's taking place. In Barbados, we have them honoring frontline workers. In Jamaica, unfortunately, murder continues to dominate the news cycle because of how heinous it is, and because of the fact that we're really struggling as a nation to contain and bring down our numbers and have some semblance of public order all across the country. So not just for the people that live uptown, but for the people that live in and around town, the average man. And that's the roundup for what's happening regionally this week.
Okay, well, Danica, thank you so much for that. Some very interesting bits and pieces there for sure. I mean, I don't even know what to say in terms of the response to, or lack thereof, of people disrespecting the COVID restrictions. I do appreciate that as we go longer into it, I think people get more frustrated, and some people have never really cared or believed that it exists, so they're willing to test the boundaries. But I think some places are just more compliant than others. So here in the Cayman Islands, I feel like we had a good degree of compliance, although every time I look at the cause list, I see people who are still showing up on the list for having breached curfew, going out on the day that wasn't their day to go out, and other things. It does speak to the fact that, a lot of people just don't care.
Indeed. By the way, Sandra, let's touch on COVID fatigue. A lot of people are tired. A lot of people.
Yeah, I think that's exactly. Yeah.
Don't know exactly what they're supposed to be doing at home. A lot of people, unfortunately, don't have good social support structures. So I do recognize that some people say, but I'm at home with 20 or 30 people, because people in Jamaica live in tenement style yards in some communities, not all. And so they'll say, well, I'm going inside to be with 20 people. That's frustrating enough. Why can't I be on the streets? So we do need to tailor the message that we're sending. But I think Caribbean governments as a whole kind of just mimic what happened in the United States and advanced countries. And I think that the more time that we as a community spend on tailoring protocols to meet our specific realities, is the better outcomes we will have. I think maybe we need to do away with curfews. Maybe we need to do away with restrictions on partying and just limit gatherings and say, hey, if you're hosting a gathering, have a district constable that must be present at this gathering so that people are maintaining the distance. Maybe we need to just learn to work within the guidelines rather than restrictions, because even in prohibition, we have found that once something is restricted in such a stringent way, people will breach it. And I feel like that's where things are going, particularly in Jamaica, because now partying is becoming an expensive endeavor. I get invites to COVID super spreader events, as I call them, and they're not cheap. You're not going for the same money that you did before, because now it's underground. Now people have to be soundproofing areas and doing stuff. So it's creating an underground industry. And this is what would happen. So I think that governments, particularly here, need to be responsive to people's needs and say, okay, fine, we're going to allow you to party, but maybe this is what we're going to do. We're going to mandate that 3 to 4 district constables be present. We're going to maintain that you guys put up glass boxes around each person. I don't know how it's going to work, but the truth of the matter is the way that we've approached things does not work for the average person. And it goes against recognizing our needs as Caribbean people. I'm not saying that partying is a need, but I'm saying it's such an integral part of the culture that I can understand that it's something that will not go away in one COVID cycle. People need time. It took them hundreds of years to develop and evolve into this partying culture. It won't go away after 6 or 8 months of having a global pandemic. People should have more responsiveness to what's happening. But the truth is, many of us are not disciplined. And discipline is something that we lack all around in our society. And that's not something that we're going to develop overnight. So governments need to come up with measures that are socially and culturally appropriate and actually treat the issues. Because what happens, putting a prohibition on partying, gathering, funerals only forces people to flout the law. And I think that's the reality of what we're seeing, particularly in the Jamaican situation. And it's not just Jamaica. Mm-hmm. In smaller Caribbean countries like St. Lucia, they're having the same problems. It's reported that even one of a minister's son might have entered through a back door and brought in a bunch of other people. Jamaica gets as much recognition as it does because we have 3-point-something million people living here. So you are going to hear more about Jamaica than you are going to hear about St. Lucia, because most people cannot identify the capital of St. Lucia. But you ask anybody from around the world, Kingston, who's familiar with the Caribbean, they know that that's Jamaica. Port-au-Prince, they know that that's Haiti. One of the reasons why we don't carry Haitian news and news from the Dominican Republic is because I don't speak Spanish, but there, the situation is spiraling out of control. Haiti has one of the highest rates of, COVID-19 spread in the region. And that's very interesting. And Jamaica is slightly behind. And other smaller countries right up there, because when you do a population analysis and you do population versus the rate of spread, you see that many of these tiny places are really where the problem lies, because at least in the Jamaican context, we have pockets. But in some places, the landmass is so small that you won't have pockets. It will be everybody because of how close they are together. So I do believe that we as a Caribbean community need to come up with some better guidelines. And I'll also tell you this, we all need to get together fast and give up this, I am a Caymanian, I am a Jamaican, I am a this, and get to the place where we say we're Caribbean people, because we're losing money in industries that are crucial to our economic survival. So what you're seeing happening is that cruise ship companies are saying, we don't want to come to the Caribbean because all of you have a different entry protocol for us to follow. Y'all need one. I can't come to your little Mickey Mouse island, Jamaica, and I have to wear a mask, sanitize, and jump with my head between my tail, and then I go across to Cayman and I have to put my hand on my forehead, and then when I go across to Barbados, it doesn't make any sense. People are not going to want to travel to the region.
Well,
So
to be fair, we don't want the cruise lines, so they can stay put. I don't know that that's necessarily true that they don't want to travel, because they seem to be pushing the boundaries, as they did a couple weeks ago with this test cruise that they did for, I think it was Barbados. But yeah, I mean, they don't want, the problem with them, it's not about even a different criteria per island. They don't want to follow any criteria. They just want to have
oh,
another
well,
free for all.
what I'm saying is they are saying that part of the problem in coming to different Caribbean islands as they had before is that we each have a different protocol. And I'm suggesting that that is indicative of a larger problem that needs to be addressed, that we as a Caribbean community need to come up with protocols for all travelers coming to our region, because we're seen as a region. We're not really seen as individual nations in the way that we think of ourselves. So we need to come together and say, listen, what we do in Cayman is what we do in Jamaica, is what we do in wherever. I think there needs to be more integration on the region on such a matter that affects us, because as a region, we struggle. And tourism, whether we want to accept tourists or not, for some people, the collapse of this industry is poverty. You know, some people are really struggling. I mean, it does make up a significant portion of GDP, maybe not in the Cayman Islands, but right across the Caribbean, St. Lucia, Barbados, Trinidad and Tobago. Carnival is not happening. Tourists are not coming. That is big for the economy. So we need to pull it together real fast and recognize that there's spin-off stuff that we rely on tourism for. So yes, you might not work at a hotel, but somebody in a household that works at a hotel has a child that attends your school that no longer has their mom no longer has a source of income. I'm not batting for the tourism industry. I'm suggesting that we're in a very rough position, and the transition should have been made years ago to unlink the major parts of our economy from being so tourism dependent. But we haven't taken things like agriculture seriously. We haven't taken, logistics and all the other areas that we always talk that we're going to do, and what we have economies that are very tourism reliant. And the sooner we come up with a plan as to how we're either going to create a new industry that can bring in income, or we're going to come up with protocols that better address the public health needs, along with the other needs that we have, economic needs. So I think it's worth having a regional discussion, because I'm sure there's taxi drivers, there's hotel workers in Cayman, there are people that are really struggling to find a new source of income, to retool, to reskill. Not everybody's going to be as strong as a Sandra who just lost a pet but is able to still perform her duties. So there's some people that are not as strong as you, Sandra, that can't rebrand as quickly as you can. And they really need the attention and the focus. And that's what leadership is about. That's what government is supposed to do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I for sure agree. I think that this also affords us the opportunity to reset the dial with these cruise companies, and we need to be more in control of that relationship. The tail has been wagging the dog, quite literally, with them for far too long. So they dictate to us what we're going to do. And ironically enough, the reason why we had our first case here, which came in by cruise, was simply because of them continuing to sail and push their agenda. And, they were trying to bully Jamaica, Cayman, and other countries in the region into allowing cruise ships to sail at the onset of the pandemic, when already it was clear that it wasn't safe to do so. So it's interesting that this multi-billion-dollar industry, which is obviously now at a complete halt, and has wielded so much power for so long continues to think that they will be in control. And maybe that's the collective conversation that the region needs to be having. How do we take back control from the cruise lines in more ways than one when they finally, are going to be coming back to our shores?
I agree with you to some extent, but I want to say this: it's not necessarily a bullying situation for cruise companies. They're corporations, like every other business. They're in it to make a profit. I don't believe in profiting at the expense of human life, but I do want people to be very realistic about something. This region relies on foreign direct investment in more ways than one, and they rely on tourism as foreign exchange and income earning. So a lot of the times when we get demands from cruise operators, from tourist companies, this is why building in certain zones and stuff like that happen, is because these countries really cannot do any better because they do have high debt to GDP ratio. People in our communities are not the most innovative in the sense that they're going to get up and do things for the social good. It comes back to part of how we're socialized in the region. So we want quick jobs, we want certain things, and we also want foreign products. But foreign products does not accept Jamaican dollar. It doesn't accept EU money or Eastern Caribbean dollar. It accepts US currency. And if you don't have US currency, Cayman's is in a special place because it's a British overseas territory. So that changes the game dramatically for you guys. But for the rest of us, you want foreign goods, you need to have foreign currency. And this is what I want people to understand. You are building your economy around things that give you foreign exchange. Without it, we don't survive. There is no survival. There is death. And we tried this before. And people who are old enough to remember the Manly era can tell you what happens. You end up in situations where you're being funded by the IMF, and now your budget per year goes to debt servicing rather than education. So you have to tread very lightly when it comes to people that keep your economy afloat, because you don't make any sense. Your economy doesn't really make any sense. And we all know that. So I think, yes, it gives us an opportunity to reset, but what we really need to do is address things like food security and say, hey, maybe we're not going to import hamburgers and beef balls. Maybe we're going to make it so that Jamaican beef is the beef that you like to eat. Maybe we're going to do a little bit of mind manipulation, because sometimes that's what really needs to happen. People are still buying cars made in Japan, American cars. We don't have any local car manufacturers. We had one many years ago in Jamaica. Everybody knows the Cherry QQ. What happened to them? That is why we're forced to be at the helm of cruise ship companies, because we don't produce our own. So we need to get to a place where we have a frank conversation about what we're producing. I don't know how Cayman farming works, but we only reduced our food import bill by 20%. We need to be sustaining our nation. We can't be having no big talk when we can't feed our people, when we're going to go hungry. So I would tread very lightly in all these tourism conversations, because they're keeping us afloat. And that's why countries are reacting in the way that they are. We have, and I am not ashamed to say it, we have Mickey Mouse governments. We have people that are not willing to make tough decisions. If you use most of your foreign exchange importing things like cars, candy bars, and whatever, you're not going to have the money that you need. That's why the Bank of Jamaica keeps intervening in the foreign currency market and putting money on sale, because guess what? If not, the dollar right now would be 200 to 1. That's a serious problem. St. Lucia is talking about the financial troubles that it's been having. Yeah, Barbados, likewise. So we're all heading back into, this is comparable to the oil shock of the 70s, when the prices were so high and your economy is built on oil. You gotta buy it. You have no excuse. So we are going down dangerous territory. So for everybody that goes, well, we can have our cake and eat it too. I say to you, no. We don't do that until we have our own industries, until we can barter with Cayman and say, Cayman, can we get 5,000 Gucci dresses and we'll send you 30,000 boxes of bananas? We don't have that type of leverage. And that's the reality of the situation. Our biggest trading partner supplies a lot of our food, supplies a lot of the commodities that we use the most. And we also debt service. We pay our debt in US dollars.
Yeah. Well, lots of conversations to be had for sure. I guess we start one discussion at a time, my dear. Thank you so much, Danica, as always, for highlighting some really important things that are happening in the region. A lot of our audience loves the regional touch to our publication. I say publication, although technically we don't publish, or online news site. And it adds I keep saying to people, the people who are like, oh, why are you reporting on news from elsewhere? I'm like, we don't live in isolation, folks. News happens all over the world that impacts us. And so it behooves us to want to be better informed and better educated about what is happening. Because as you said, if we had even regionally a better response to a lot of these things, we could be that much further ahead. So thank you, Danica. I appreciate it.
Have a great day, Sandra, and cheer up. I know it's not going to be easy for you today, but I will tell you this. In every loss in life, there's an opportunity for new growth, and there is new life coming your way. So I don't know if dogs go to heaven, but I do know that wherever Coco is, that she's looking down on you, and you got something good coming your way shortly. So continue to be positive, continue to be upbeat, and it will be tough. And grief is a must, and death is a part of life. And this too shall pass, and we will persevere. Have a great morning, guys. Goodbye.
Okay, thanks, Danica. Well, I can't imagine there being a heaven without dogs. So if heaven exists, there better be dogs there, because otherwise it can't be heaven. But thank you guys so much. I'm going to end the show a little bit early today. I am going to court to follow up on a couple of things that we've been covering and that we need to report on. So someone sent me this morning, and I just wanted to read this as a final word in memory of Coco. Thank you so much. This person says, my forever pet, there's something missing in my home. I feel it day and night. I know it will take time and strength before things feel quite right. But just for now, I need to mourn. My heart, it needs to mend. Though some may say it's just a pet, I know I've lost a friend. You brought such laughter to my home and richness to my days. A constant friend through joy or loss with gentle, loving ways. Companion, friend, and confidant, a friend I won't forget. You live forever in my heart, my sweet forever pet. Thank you so much. Thank all of you for always asking about Coco, even in the past. You know that sometimes she would bark even during the show. And make her presence be known. Shadeen, private messages, I'll try it. I have not personally logged in, but I can try it this morning and see if there's any issues. So thank you again to everyone. And I can assure you that this loss will not be in vain. There are issues that we need to address as it relates to animals in this country. And you know, we need to have the conversation. Yeah, it can't be for naught. It can't be for nothing. So thank you guys, really. Thank you. It's going to be hard. Obviously, we need to break the news to a 4-year-old, and I'm not even sure how to do that, to be honest. But we'll get through this, as we do so many challenging things in life. We will definitely get through this. So thank you guys so much. All right, folks, today is Wednesday, December the 2nd. Again, I am encouraging you to stay tuned for the weather alerts. We are under severe weather alert today going into tomorrow. So let's just try to be safe out there, folks, and take any precautionary measures around your home that you need to. And hopefully we will see each other tomorrow, God's willing. Have a blessed day.
Thank you for tuning in to another edition of The Cold Hard Truth. Make sure to check Facebook for showtimes and more information and the latest news at CaymanMarlRoad.com. Subscribe to our IG and Facebook pages to get the latest happenings.